across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In the big opinion, after just 5 months in charge, Sir Keir Starmer is planning a reboot of his struggling new administration. The problem is, will the next 5 months be worse than the last? Find out in just a moment. In a big story, as allegations around MasterChef star Gregg Wallace mount, we'll hear from Channel 4's How Clean Is Your House star Aggie McKenzie with her own experience of working with the star. Would slashing immigration numbers save Sir Keir Starmer's premiership? I'll be asking my top Westminster insider. And this weekend sees the 150th anniversary of the birth of Winston Churchill. And a new book draws parallels between President-elect Donald Trump and our greatest ever wartime leader. So, will Donald Trump save the West, as Churchill did in 1945? The author of this remarkable and controversial new book joins me before the end of the hour. And in the Take at 10, as pressure mounts on Gregg Wallace, the MasterChef star, well, he just keeps on digging.
Handful of middle-class women of a certain age.
Yikes! Who's advising him? I'll be giving my verdict on yet another scandal engulfing the BBC at 10. Reacting to the big stories of the day, tonight's top pundits, we have former Conservative MP Michael Fabricant, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday Charlotte Griffiths, and TV news legend Michael Crick. Plus, by the way, 2 Christmas trees. How about that? Folks, 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. I'll be putting Sir Keir Starmer on the rack straight after the news headlines and Sam Francis.
Very much and good evening to you. 2 minutes past 9. The top story tonight. Well, more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the Channel since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. That's the biggest milestone in just 5 months, quicker than Rishi Sunak during his time in number 10, where it took... In fact, I believe we can head straight back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam Francis. Let me tell you that things are going from bad to worse for the BBC with this shocking story about Gregg Wallace. Well, he's digging deep. He seems to be getting the worst possible advice. So that is my take at 10. Lots to get through, but we start with my big opinion. Oh dear, after a honeymoon shorter than Tom Cruise's trousers, this new Labour administration is to have a reset. Now, it defies the laws of political gravity that following 14 years of Tory rule, a new government could be this unpopular this soon, particularly having had over a decade in opposition to make a plan for power. Well, it seems that the plan was to say anything you have to get into number 10 and hope for the best from there. Well, it's not going well. We had the Freebie Gate row, which does matter because Sir Keir Starmer promised to clean up politics and tackle sleaze. It emerged that, frankly, he is the greediest of all 650 MPs, having taken clothes, glasses, accommodation and concert and football tickets worth over £100,000, far more than any of his peers in the House of Commons. We had the assault on pensioners and farmers, neither of which were in the manifesto. And Rachel Reeves's October budget is starting to make Liz Truss's mini-budget look like a masterclass in prudent economics, given that it has seen growth collapse from 0.5% under Rishi Sunak in July, the highest in the G7, to 0.1% now, with the OBR predicting anemic growth for years, as well as higher inflation and interest rates. Plus, the cost of government debt was higher after Reeves's budget than Truss's. Funny that. Now, The Guardian report that Rachel Reeves's tax raid has sent business confidence plunging to the lowest level since the first COVID lockdown. The Institute of Directors say that the Chancellor's record tax rises are undermining economic growth and cutting off investment plans, with bosses forced to slash pay rises, sack staff and raise prices to cope with the £25 billion national insurance increase. Now, Sir Tim Martin, the Wetherspoons boss and one of my total heroes, said the following this week. He said all democratic governments need to manage the relationship between an economic horse and a public services cart. Society needs both. This government has disincentivised and discouraged the horse. He's right. We are headed for the knacker's yard. In the last 4 months, we've seen the scrapping of the Ofsted one-word inspection, taking choice and important information away from parents. We've seen a tax raid on private schools, devastating for the more than 3,000 kids whose education will be disrupted as they add a burden to an already oversubscribed state sector. And we've had the chaos, the absurd surrender of the Chagos Islands, which has enraged not just President-elect Donald Trump, but the new Premier of Mauritius too. Not so much statecraft there as what a state. There was the Rachel Reeves CV fiasco and her claims to be an economist, but possibly only an economist with the truth. And the Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh, resigns following an historic conviction for fraud over a work mobile. Well, she's got plenty of time on her hands now to choose a new model from the Carphone warehouse. Perhaps she's still got a few Nokia 8210s knocking around in a drawer at home. There was Labour's sellout to the unions and the inflation-busting pay rise awarded to junior doctors and train drivers. And this week, Sir Keir Starmer criticised open borders and that crazy figure of over 1 million people entering the UK in 2023 alone, even though he himself has previously blocked measures to get numbers down, and he axed the Rwanda plan, our only deterrent to stop the boats. And as the closure of Ellesmere Port demonstrates, this government's pursuit of net zero is going to hurt business, hurt the economy, cost taxpayers and cost jobs. So whether it's the bacon sandwich mutilating Ed Miliband, Sharon Stone tribute act Angela Rayner, or slavery reparations fan and Donald Trump troll David Lammy, it's hard to see any member of the cabinet that isn't an astonishing liability. And that's why last night's panel on this show speculated that if Starmer were to go, his replacement would probably be even less popular. And now there's talk of a reboot. That's right, a terrifying sequel to this Labour government, like The Hangover Part 2, but worse. This new administration is proving to be the nightmare on Downing Street, made up of the good, the bad and the ugly. And it's embarked on a mission impossible. A bit like Titanic, we know how this one ends. Your reaction, are you excited about Labour's reboot? Can Keir Starmer turn this around and win back the confidence of the British people? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. First up, tonight's top pundits, we have former Conservative MP Michael Fabricant. We also have the editor-at-large at the Mail newspaper. That is Charlotte Griffiths, Mail on Sunday, I should add, and television news legend Michael Crick. Great to see all three of you. Charlotte, let me start with you. Can Keir Starmer turn this one around? He's going to have a reboot, a refresh. Will it work?
I don't think it's going to work. I think it's an admission of guilt. It's so embarrassing that he's even planning this thing. And he's claiming that it's been in the works for ages and wasn't conducted in the last few weeks. But I think it's a sort of admission that things have gone horribly wrong. And people are going to see it for what it is. It's going to fall flat.
Wouldn't any government have a bumpy ride with their inheritance? Whether it's the economy, broken public services, international wars. You know, haven't they inherited an almighty mess?
They have, and God knows they've told us that 1,000 times. But how many governments sort of then plan this sort of reboot 4 months in? It's almost like he's saying, OK, well, some of this actually is our fault, actually. And we do realise it's going a bit bumpily wrong. And it's a little bit of... But maybe it's a bit of an admission, really. Michael, is this talk of a reboot an admission by Labour that things aren't working at the moment?
Well, it is internally, yes. And I think that, Labour did have an awful hand dealt it, both in the economy and the public finances. And it looks like it's difficult to see the economy getting better very quickly, particularly with the prospect of tariffs, thanks to President Trump. Already, we are, if you measure GDP and GDP per head, we're heading for recession, or maybe even in recession right now, given that the population, because of the net migration figures, is now going up at the rate of more than 1% a year. Labour's problem was it didn't plan enough for government. It didn't expect to win, actually, until very late in the day. Second, I think the government lacks talent. And I think the government also lacks, particularly Starmer himself, people with political instincts. And a lot of the mistakes they've made would not have been made by Blair and the people around him, who had long-standing political instincts. Starmer's new to politics, remember.
So Keir Starmer needs Peter Mandelson, a John Prescott and Alistair Campbell.
People like that, yeah. And he's got one or two of them. He's got Jonathan Powell, he's the National Security Advisor. He's got Morgan McSweeney. Morgan McSweeney, I think, is more of an election campaigner than somebody who knows the workings of government. Starmer is going to... his ministerial team is very weak. That's partly because the Parliamentary Labour Party was very weak, because nobody wanted to be a Labour MP in the Corbyn years. Some very talented people came in at the election, and Starmer is clearly fast-tracking them into high ministerial office. You saw that with Heidi Alexander this week. But it is... I think Labour's going to find it really difficult to win a second term.
Fascinating. Well, listen, earlier, GB News spoke to the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, about how Labour are doing in power so far. Take a listen.
Been an absolutely disastrous start to the Labour administration, hasn't it?
Not at all. We've had a good increase in the minimum
Mr.
wage.
McFadden.
We've had more help for carers. We've had a freeze in the fuel duty. We've protected the pay slips of people, as we said we would in our manifesto. We've had a lot to sort out. You're right. Had to sort out a collapsing prison system. We're having to start to get the NHS waiting list down. We've got legislation going through on transport that we talked about earlier. We've got a big agenda, and this week we're going to take that forward with a new plan for change.
Interesting interview. Michael Fabricant, good to see you. You're out of the Commons now, so you can be honest. You can say what you really
Well, I am, and I always do with you.
You're very honest. What do you think about all this?
Well, look, first of all, you know, this nonsense. I was shocked, actually, that even you, Charlotte, believe this nonsense, that they inherited a bad situation. First of all, we have the fastest-growing economy in the G7, and yes, there was a lot of debt per capita, but less than France, less than the United States, less than Italy. Actually, some would say that given the appalling situation that had happened with COVID, which affected the world economy, they actually came into a country where they could have actually done something. But you know why it's not working? Because when Labour got in 1997, it was New Labour. Tony Blair was not an old lefty. If you look at the cabinet now, you look at the sort of things that Keir Starmer says. He's an old lefty, a dud. He's someone who has come back from 30, 40 years ago when you thought the battle had been won, the battle of ideas, and it's not working. And they know it's not working. It's not working economically, but more importantly, it's not working with the British public.
Well, that's an interesting point. Is Keir Starmer more Harold Wilson than Tony Blair? Michael?
Well, I suppose in those... he is, in a way, in that he is basically a political opportunist. Yeah. And Blair had more of a clear idea of... He had certain principles and an idea of where he was going. I think one of the mistakes, the stupid mistake Labour made, and history should have told them this, is don't promise that you will never put up taxes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, George Bush got into trouble on that, John Major did. And, you know, and to say you're not going to put up income tax or national insurance or VAT doesn't leave you with many options. And as a result, it's business that's been clobbered in a huge way rather than the pain spread out as Jeremy Hunt would have had to do, or whoever had succeeded him as a Conservative Chancellor if there had been one.
Charlotte, I mean, they've got 4.5 years to go and a stonking majority. They've got time to learn on the job, don't they?
Yeah,
Can they? Will they adapt?
I think so. I think this is the first step towards adapting. And I think that actually a leadership contest would have been triggered if it had been later on in the Premiership. With that list that you read out earlier, I mean, it is a terribly long to-do list of things they've got to change. But, you know, he's got so long to go, there's no point in triggering a leadership contest. So.
Fascinating stuff. Well, look, we're going to continue this conversation. But first up, it's time for our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway and your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. It could be yours. Here's how you get your hands on 50k.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up, the big story as allegations around MasterChef star Gregg Wallace mount. We'll hear from Channel 4's How Clean Is Your House star Aggie McKenzie with her experience of working with the star. That's Aggie McKenzie, Channel 4's How Clean Is Your House star, in the studio with me next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Does it make you all nostalgic? Do you miss the jungle looking at that?
I do, actually. I mean, it was one of the highlights of my career. I really enjoyed it because I'm like a little boy. I love being outdoors and taking the mick and arguing, and I love all that, you know, so that's what it's all about. It's so much emotional stuff because food plays so much a part in being in the jungle, and it really gets your sort of mental bits going. You know, it is a. I would love to go back. I mean, maybe there's a show called Geriatrics in the Jungle. I think that might be a good one.
And did you ever have to shout those immortal words, "I'm a celebrity, get me out of here"?
No, I didn't. I think Daniela Westbrook was the only one who bottled out. Most of us stuck it to the end, well, as far to the end as we could get. It was, we had something called the Terrible Trio. It was me, Phil Tufnell, and Linda Barker. And we were the late night drinkers and smokers in those days. Yeah, we just took the mick out of everything, really.
And I was just saying before we came to you, Anthony, there's something a bit perverse about how we all enjoy, my kids as well, absolute hysterics at some people's clear distress. I mean, on the opening show, this guy, Dean, who we're watching now, they were having to eat, I don't want to use the word at this hour of the morning, but part of a male anatomy combined with some eyeballs mushed up into a smoothie. Yeah. And he was drinking it. He said, "My IBS! My IBS!" And we were just laughing.
Play havoc with
It's so weird, isn't it, that we find that so funny?
I'm looking at the two Barrys, you know, Barry McGuigan and GK Barry as my sort of favourites, if you want.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is time now for this. Thank you, Harry. Now, it is time for the big story, and tonight, allegations around the behaviour and conduct of MasterChef star Gregg Wallace are mounting. Now, I'll be tackling this story in depth in the Take at 10, in which I'll be revealing further shocking details and allegations. But let's hear now from one of Wallace's fellow TV stars who appeared on Celebrity MasterChef in 2011. It is the presenter of Channel 4's hit show, How Clean Is Your House, Aggie McKenzie. Aggie, lovely to have you in the studio.
Hello, how are you?
First of all, I hope the studio is spick and span.
It's perfectly good.
And your verdict on the new Christmas trees, which were installed last night.
Yeah, very nice.
Right, they're as plastic as my my pen, but there you go. It's the thought that counts. Aggie, what were your first impressions of Gregg Wallace when you worked on that show?
Well, I was very much looking forward to being on the show, and I took it terribly seriously. In terms of Gregg Wallace, I mean, from the beginning, he was somebody who just told these stupid jokes that weren't at all funny. And I realised that actually, after a while, this was all he was able to do. He wasn't able to have any kind of adult conversations or know how to talk to anybody. So it was as if he was filling in the time with these stupid jokes. And I just found I found his worst offence was being boring, actually.
That's interesting. I mean, what do you think the endless wisecracks tell us about his personality and his true character? I mean, is he profoundly shy, or is he living a double life? You know, is it all an act? What is the story?
I think maybe a lack of confidence, particularly with people around him who he knows are maybe brighter, know more about food. I don't think he knows anything about food, and I think his palate was very poor. And I don't really know how he came to be a co-presenter on that programme.
I think the BBC decided to make him a star, and it wasn't necessarily based on qualifications. I think he's a greengrocer by trade.
Yes, that's right. And you know what? He's done very, very, very well for the BBC. And I think probably what's happened is that the show is such a major success. It's made so much money for the BBC all over the world. Why would they rock the boat and say anything or try to... I mean, I know that he has been cautioned on a number of occasions, I understand, but it's as if he can't... You know, what's the expression? A leopard can't change its spots. Yes. And I think that's probably what's happened. He hasn't really been taken to task strongly enough to change his behaviour.
Did you witness anything when you worked with Gregg Wallace that you found inappropriate, either physically or remarks that he made? I mean, you said the jokes weren't very funny, but did he ever say anything that was wide of the mark?
I can't remember. No, I can't honestly say that I did. No, I really can't. I didn't ever witness him behaving really inappropriately towards anybody. No.
I mean, do these allegations surprise you, therefore?
No, they don't, actually. They don't. I mean, I was there like 12 years ago, so it's a long time between them then and now, and a long time for somebody whose behaviour could become a lot worse.
And you've said that his personality and the way he conducted himself was very different, him and John Turode, very different on air compared to off air. What was the difference?
Do you know what? It really reminded me of me and Kim. Chalk and cheese.
How clean is your house?
Yeah,
of course, big
that's
Channel 4
right.
hit you
that's
and,
right.
and
in
Kim
front
Woodburn.
of the camera, loads of energy, and I think often sometimes if there's friction between presenters, it creates this energy, and then it's great on camera, and then camera's turned off, you go off to opposite ends of the room. Yeah. And I could see this happening, and I recognised it, absolutely recognised it.
If the more serious allegations are dismissed, can Gregg Wallace return to TV, do you think?
Oh, I just don't think it's going to happen, is it? You know, is it who's going to have him? Who knows?
And if the serious allegations...
I mean, he's done Strictly, hasn't he?
Well, he has, of course. That's it. I mean, that's the last port of call, maybe the jungle. But if the allegations which are of a more serious nature are dismissed, and in the end, if it boils down to inappropriate jokes, is that harsh treatment for him to lose his career?
I don't think it does boil down to inappropriate jokes. From what I've been reading, I think it is a lot more serious than that. Not venturing into criminality, I don't think, but behaviour that's not acceptable or appropriate in a production team, particularly when you're the person at the top who can call the shots and have lots of power, particularly over junior members of the staff. We all know that the people at the bottom, the runners, the researchers, are the ones who work the hardest, get paid the least, and don't have a voice.
And did you notice, notwithstanding that you didn't see anything inappropriate from Gregg Wallace on that occasion, but did you notice that Gregg Wallace was in a power position on that show? Did he seem like he called the shots?
Oh, most definitely. He did, yes. He came across to me as somebody who was quite entitled, quite sort of lazy, didn't really make any effort with the contestants. And these are like the celebs, so goodness knows what he's like with ordinary people. You know, I don't think he makes any effort.
Did you not warm to him? Did he reach out to you? Was there any banter?
No.
Any connection?
No, I was kind of like, will you please just stop it already?
Yeah.
I can't have any more of this. And on the day that I was kicked off, and I was on the show for quite a long time, I took it very seriously. I went round the production team, said goodbye and thank you to everyone, and said goodbye to John. He was very gracious. And I thought, oh, where's Gregg? I'll say goodbye to him. And I passed an open door. He was in an office and he had his feet up on the desk, on the phone. I went, I'm off now. He went, yeah, whatever. And I thought, ooh, I'll remember that. I'll hold that grudge.
Well, there you go, and you're talking about it on telly now. Before I let you go, you were a very successful star on Channel 4 for many years, and of course you've worked for lots of different channels. Is it unfair to look at the BBC and focus on their handling of some of their biggest names? You know, we've had the Hugh Edwards situation and others too. Jermaine Jenis has lost his job on Match of the Day.
Yes.
Does the BBC have a case to answer here?
Perhaps it's more a case that the BBC have the bigger names. I think it may just be a coincidence that those people happen to work for the BBC and they happen to behave badly.
Aggie, it's great to see you. What are you up to these days?
Do you know what? I'm a granny, and I am...
That's impossible.
Do you know what? It's an illness.
I need new glasses.
I'm
How's that
obsessed
possible?
with my granddaughter. I see her most days.
That's great. How old is she?
17 months. Sylvie, I love her to bits.
And that keeps you busy.
But I'm also a yoga teacher, so I teach every day.
And then, you know, the baby, do you clean up after her?
I do. I love a dirty nappy. Oh, I do.
Sure you do. Aggie, so good to see you. Please come back and see us again soon.
Thank you.
Folks, there you go, the brilliant Aggie Mackenzie. Now, in relation to the allegations against Gregg Wallace, the BBC have said if issues are raised with us, we have robust processes in place to deal with them swiftly and appropriately. Mr. Wallace's lawyers insist the claims are entirely false, saying the suggestion that Wallace, who has presented the popular BBC One cooking show alongside John Turode since 2005, engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature, was entirely false. Brilliant stuff. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers across the country. Every day, they have a special message just for you to celebrate the festive season. And here is our first.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 1.
Hi, I'm Chris Tufnell. I'm the vicar of Uterbridge Parish Church near Sheffield. On Christmas Day 1997, I opened a present. It was a book, and on the cover was a picture of a train, a boy with a scar on his head, and a sign saying platform 9 3/4. It was, of course, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the first in the major series. But I remember thinking, it'll never catch on. And so it stayed on my shelf gathering dust for years. People told me I should read it, but I didn't. Until I realized this Harry Potter thing was getting really quite big now. And so I opened the cover, began to read, and sure enough, I was soon hooked. I think it's all too easy for us to do the same with the story of the person Christmas is all about, Jesus Christ. It's clear his story has caught on, it's shaped the Western world and given us the values we cherish so much at Christmas. Most people have heard something about him, but few have actually read the story for themselves. If that's you, might it be time that you did? Happy Christmas.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. There's been plenty of showers around for many of us this weekend, but it will be turning colder as we head into the start of the new working week. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure moving away towards Scandinavia, leaving northerly winds across the UK as we head into the start of Monday and Tuesday. Back to the rest of Sunday though, plenty of showers around, these clearing their way eastwards as we head through the evening and turning increasingly to sleet and snow across northern parts of Scotland, particularly over any high ground. Further south and further east, we will see some clearer spells developing during the early hours, and for most of us, it'll be a much colder night than we've seen recently. Only 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Scotland and only around 6 or 7 degrees across much of England and Wales. So quite a chilly start across parts of Scotland during Monday morning, perhaps some ice around in places, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. But we'll see those sleet and snow showers continuing across the far north as we go through Monday daytime. Across Northern Ireland, there will still be some showers around, these likely falling as rain for most places. And across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day. But for the rest of England and Wales, generally a drier and brighter start to the day, albeit some scattered showers across western areas. That area of showery rain across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards in towards Monday afternoon, and we'll still see those sleet and snow showers across parts of Scotland into the afternoon as well. But for most of us, it should be turning a little bit drier through the afternoon, with plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, and feeling much colder than we've seen recently. Only 10 or 11 degrees in the south and 5 or 6 further north, and with some brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, feeling colder still. A cold start to Tuesday as well, quite a widespread frost across the UK, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this weather front pushing its way eastwards into the afternoon, likely to turn to sleet and snow over hills in the north. Further wet and windy weather is likely through Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll see those temperatures on the rise too, back to around, if not above average for the time of year.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now this week, as it was revealed that legal net migration reached almost 1.7 million people over the last 2 years, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has criticised the last Conservative government.
Previous government were running an open borders experiment. As the ONS sets out, nearly 1 million people came to Britain in the year ending June 2023. That is 4 times the migration levels compared with 2019.
And since then, the Prime Minister has been on X, and he sent the following post: where the last government failed you, this one will not. They drove up immigration numbers. We will get them down. Well, Labour have promised to get those numbers down. Could slashing levels of immigration save Sir Keir Starmer's premiership? Let's get the views of one of my favourite journalists, the former political editor of LBC Radio, Theo Usherwood. Hi, Theo. How are you this evening?
Very good evening. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Will Sir Keir Starmer seek to drastically reduce immigration?
I think he'd like to, but I don't think that he necessarily is prepared to go where Rishi Sunak...
Can I interrupt you, because the microphone's on the blink, which I know is very out of character for this place. And what I'll do is, in the meantime, I will just... Are you back in the room?
Should you hear me now?
What a pro. There you go. You can even control your own kit. No wonder you were so popular at LBC. So back to... Will Starmer try to reduce the numbers? Because
he will try to reduce the numbers. I just don't think he's going to be prepared to go where Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson were prepared to go, in terms of, and we're talking about small, let's separate it first in terms of small boats, but in terms of a deportation plan to Rwanda. So I think we're without addressing those pull factors to the UK, it's very difficult to see how he reduces those numbers. In actual fact, that plan around Rwanda had started to work. We had seen a reduction in the numbers since it was introduced, and of course Keir Starmer on his second day in office decided to scrap that plan. And when he went to it was the G7 back in September, and he stood alongside Giorgia Meloni and the Italian Prime Minister, and she's looking at something similar, he said that he wasn't minded with Albania. He said he wasn't minded to go down that route, but was interested, and we know the government's interested in spending money or funding, supporting countries where migrants are travelling to the UK from. On the question of legal migration, if you look at the visa route, the government could tighten up the rules, and it has looked at, the last government looked at thresholds and also allowing dependents to come with those who have visas to this country. But that will have implications for business, it will have implications for the NHS, it will have implications particularly for universities as well, which rely heavily on overseas students coming to this country, and they pay, of course, much higher fees than UK students pay to be educated at higher education in this country. So he is under pressure. I think you're quite right to say he's under pressure to reduce migration levels, but it's also worth just remembering there are pressures from business, from the NHS, from those sectors that rely heavily on overseas workers in this country. And it was interesting when he said, when he gave that press conference, he said he wants to make one of the stipulations of firms hiring workers from overseas. One of the stipulations he wants to introduce is that actually they have to train domestic workers. But what he didn't go, and he could have gone further on this, and he didn't, is he could have done a like-for-like policy, a one-for-one policy, and actually said if you take an overseas worker, you have to take a domestic worker. And he didn't go that far. And of course, the complaints from business, and we know this, is that actually they feel they get better trained workers from overseas, they feel they get cheaper labour from overseas, and they don't necessarily want them to incur those extra costs of training people up.
Well, that's right. Big business are very happy with the current levels of status quo of legal net migration, and you mentioned the NHS, public services, social care, to mention just a few. I mean, it's my view that if Starmer got legal net migration to circa 100 or 200,000 a year, I think that would be a political win for him in 4 years' time. But as you say, that would be a painful process with implications for the country and the economy. But also, would his own party struggle with a leader that sought to bring down immigration to that level?
I think...
would they let him do it?
So let's just split it so we're clear on it. If you split it, I think the Rwanda plan, and this is why the Tories in part introduced it, was because they knew it would be a dividing line within his own party. I don't think he's going to be able to. He doesn't have the political capital within his own party to introduce such a scheme. If he were to introduce such a scheme, and I think if you look at what's happening, particularly in with the German elections coming up, we could see a right-wing party, the CDU, come into force there. Emmanuel Macron's going to be under pressure in a couple of years' time in that French presidential election. I think if Europe was to come up with a plan where they would introduce offshore processing, then he might be able to get away with it. But if he's to go it alone, I can't see that happening. I don't think he'll be allowed. I don't think his party will be allowed.
I don't think, essentially, the Labour movement will really let Keir Starmer have those drastic policies that would probably properly stop the boats. But what about that one lever that any Prime Minister does have control of? They can decide how many come in. They could make it zero tomorrow if they so wish. So my question to you is, regarding the legal net migration, will the party support a Prime Minister that got numbers down to 100 or 200k a year?
No, I don't think they would, and I don't think.
So that's a political headache for him.
And I don't think businesses would support it. And we've already seen, the power of business, and of course there's a complete juxtaposition there, isn't there? Because actually, if you look at the fact that they're going to have to pay an extra £25 billion a year in additional national insurance contributions, that they're, angry about, and the pressures that put on them. I don't think, and you heard the mood music from the CBI conference, a couple of weeks ago now, really furious with the approach that Keir Starmer had taken and Rachel Reeves had taken towards business. I don't think they'll be able to stomach it. The university sector, we know about the trouble that universities are in financially.
Some household name universities could fold
if
numbers drop
sufficiently. Absolutely. I think, and without this, I think we're even going to see some universities merge because they're just not going to be able to pay for it.
With any luck, some of the woke ones will go down. Listen, let me ask you about 2029.
Yeah.
I know that's a long time from now, but you're always looking ahead and sort of just predicting how things are going to play out. Potentially, Keir Starmer faces a war on two fronts at the next election, doesn't he? A potentially rejuvenated Conservative Party who have got their act together and an insurgent reform with a charismatic leader. Does it follow that Sir Keir Starmer shifts to the right in the years ahead?
He needs to, and I think one of the things that that's interesting about his speech on Thursday, and it's not going to include a target, by the way, on net.
Is this the great reboot that we're looking forward to?
These reboots take them with a pinch.
Has he bought? Can I ask you? Has he bought a new suit and new glasses?
Or somebody else bought it for him. I think. Well, they've committed not to doing that. But can he? In that speech, and he's going to be talking about a ruthless efficiency to the way that government is managed, and I think that there is a realisation. He spent so many weeks abroad in the first 5 months. I think somebody's done a sum of it. He spent something like 15 days on a plane, whether it to be to the Commonwealth heads of government or...
That's a lot of orange juice and peanuts, isn't it?
Or Azerbaijan to COP29, where no other world leader turned up. And I think there is a realisation that if he's going to win in 2029, he needs to be able to deliver some results, and that's in part what this is about on Thursday, this reboot's about on Thursday, so they can prove it in 4 years' time. But I think it's also about ensuring that the government does have, his Labour government does have a relentless focus on delivering the changes. Now, of course, Reform UK under Nigel Farage, we've heard this weekend that they could be getting to the tune of, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds from Elon Musk and X, and of course the potentially the platform of X to promote, and we saw the support and how effective that was with the presidential election and Donald Trump allowing the Republican candidate to, in effect, bypass the mainstream media and go straight to voters with podcasts like Joe Rogan or Sean Ryan. Incredibly effective. And I just think that the challenges ahead for Keir Starmer are so significant, and if you count the fact that at some point there is going to be, you would think, some sort of accommodation between Nigel Farage and the Tories before the next election, there has to be, because they're just eating each other's vote. I can't see.
Could those two big egos, those two big beasts of the jungle, Badenoch and Farage, live with each other in some kind of partnership?
I'm not sure they can, and I think
they're both big personalities.
I think the reticence from Nigel Farage's point of view is that he's seen what's happened to previous Conservative leaders, where they get swallowed up by the Conservative Party and then chewed out and spat out. And I think that's something that he'll be wanting to be very careful about. But if there is that accommodation and they manage to get the right in this country, manages to get its act together, then Keir Starmer's got real problems.
Most definitely. I know that Nigel Farage has got his eye on Labour votes at the next election. Briefly, if you can, at what point do we see Labour backbenchers on manoeuvres if the Prime Minister remains this unpopular? Because at the moment, his poll ratings are in the toilet, aren't they? I mean, he's less popular than Rishi Sunak, he's less popular than Donald Trump, and less popular than Nigel Farage.
And, of course, he had been doing so well in the immediate aftermath of the election. He was something like plus 19, and now he's slipped back to minus 32. Just a word of caution, the mechanics of the Labour Party make regicide much more difficult than with the Conservative Party. So even if there's a challenge to Keir Starmer's leadership, he does retain the right to go up against the challenger in an election. We saw that with Jeremy Corbyn when Owen Smith challenged him back in 2016, and then Jeremy Corbyn prevailed. So he needs to be very careful. Anybody who's going to move against Keir Starmer needs to be very careful. But I think you're right. There are many Labour MPs on the backbenches who are thinking, do I really want to be a one-term MP? Do I really want to serve for 5 years? And as we approach the next election, do they start thinking about whether somebody like Wes Streeting or the left start thinking about Angela Rayner? Would they be more popular? But I would just be cautious, because the mechanics of the Labour Party make an overthrowing of the Prime Minister much trickier than it is for the Conservative Party. We've all got used to the febrile, for how febrile that is, but it's not the same for Labour.
The plot thickens. Theo, thank you for coming in. We'll catch up soon. My thanks to the former political editor of LBC, Theo Usherwood. Now, this weekend sees the 150th anniversary of the birth of Winston Churchill. And a new book draws parallels between President-elect Donald Trump and our greatest ever wartime leader. So, will Trump save the West as Churchill did in 1945? The author of this remarkable and controversial new book joins me next. Oh, that was a great chat. Thank you.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is some of her delicious hummus. We both love hummus. This is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here. So can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No.
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafaba or water to help with consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods. So algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top.
That sounds.
And there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up in the Take at 10, as pressure mounts on Gregg Wallace, the MasterChef star just keeps on digging. You won't want to miss that. But first, Mark Meets. And this weekend saw the 150th birthday of our great wartime leader, Winston Churchill. Well, a new book called Trump and Churchill, Defenders of Western Civilization, draws parallels between the new president-elect and our wartime Prime Minister, arguing that Donald Trump will save the free world in the next 4 years, as Churchill did in 1945. Well, I'm delighted to say that this book, which has got America talking, is out now, and its author is the political broadcaster and writer Nick Adams. Nick, congratulations on the release of the book. As personalities, how alike are these two men?
Thank you, Mark, for having me. It's a very interesting question, because when you look at it on the surface, they don't have much in common. One was 5'6" and loved to drink. The other is a 6'3" teetotaler. One napped every afternoon. The other barely sleeps. One began his career by opposing tariffs. The other by introducing them. One was a great orator. The other a great tweeter. One a lifelong politician, the other a billionaire businessman. But as soon as you start drilling down, Mark, a little deeper, you find that actually there are very, very similar people. Neither concealed their true self.
Most definitely. Apologies, Nick, we just lost the line there for a moment. Now, Winston Churchill was hugely engaged in international politics, as is Donald Trump. How similar is their vision for the free world?
Look, I think both men believe in freedom. Both men believe in the West. Both men believe in Western civilization. And both men do everything they possibly can to achieve that. They don't care if they are intensely disliked or hated. They are clear thinkers. They're plain speakers. They're alpha males. They both stare down their enemies. Both were more than prepared to endure battles with their political establishment that wanted their destruction. And something really interesting, Mark, is when you go and read newspaper excerpts of Churchill's era about Churchill, if you were to just take those same words and present them to someone today in the United States of America, those people would believe that those newspaper excerpts were about Donald Trump, because the criticisms are always the same. Doesn't listen to anybody, doesn't take advice from his advisors. So there is a great deal in common between these two men.
Indeed, both big personalities, both thick-skinned, both disruptors, and both, at certain points, hated, certainly by the establishment.
Certainly, without question, yes. And like I say, the reason I think that the comparison is never made more frequently is because on the surface, superficially, they're very different. There's a difference in size. There's a difference in one loved to drink, one never drinks. So people don't. One was very, very eloquent. So often people don't make that kind of connection. But I think that it is the connection to make. I do think that Donald Trump is as consequential a figure as Winston Churchill.
And here's a question for you. And you're right. The book is fascinating because, you know, in some ways they're cut from the same cloth. In other ways, they couldn't be more different. Churchill was aristocracy, and we know that Trump is, in relative terms, a self-made man, certainly from his father's generation onwards, whereas Churchill's wealth went back many generations. What would Winston Churchill have made of Donald Trump? Would he have liked Donald Trump? Would they have got on?
Yes, it's a great question. I think that they would have gotten on. I think that Donald Trump is very much an old soul. And I think that he and Winston would have gotten on. Obviously, socially, I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked out, but I do think that they would have admired each other. I can tell you that President Trump, and I know this, President Trump, because I've spoken many times to President Trump about this book, President Trump loves and admires Winston Churchill very much. I think that one of President Trump's goals has always been to be as much of consequence as someone like Winston Churchill.
Briefly, Nick, sorry to interrupt you briefly. The clock's against us. Will the Churchill bust go back into the Oval Office when Trump returns to the White House in January?
Absolutely no question. May even make itself to the Resolute desk.
Brilliant stuff. Listen, Nick, what a thrill to have you on the show. So excited about this book. Perfect Christmas purchase if you like a bit of history and a bit of politics. Trump and Churchill, Defenders of Western Civilization, is by Nick Adams and is out now. Thank you, Nick. OK, folks, in the take at 10, as pressure mounts on Gregg Wallace, the MasterChef star just keeps on digging.
Handful of middle-class women of a certain age.
I'll be giving my verdict on yet another scandal engulfing the BBC. Why does our national state broadcaster struggle with its biggest stars? I'll have the answer straight after this.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. There's been plenty of showers around for many of us this weekend, but it will be turning colder as we head into the start of the new working week. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure moving away towards Scandinavia, leaving northerly winds across the UK as we head into the start of Monday and Tuesday. Back to the rest of Sunday, though, plenty of showers around, these clearing their way eastwards as we head through the evening and turning increasingly to sleet and snow across northern parts of Scotland, particularly over any high ground. Further south and further east, we will see some clearer spells developing during the early hours, and for most of us, it'll be a much colder night than we've seen recently. Only 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Scotland and only around 6 or 7 degrees across much of England and Wales. So quite a chilly start across parts of Scotland during Monday morning, perhaps some ice around in places, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. But we'll see those sleet and snow showers continuing across the far north as we go through Monday daytime. Across Northern Ireland, there will still be some showers around, these likely falling as rain for most places. And across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day. But for the rest of England and Wales, generally a drier and brighter start to the day, albeit some scattered showers across western areas. That area of showery rain across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards in towards Monday afternoon, and we'll still see those sleet and snow showers across parts of Scotland into the afternoon as well. But for most of us, it should be turning a little bit drier through the afternoon, with plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, and feeling much colder than we've seen recently. Only 10 or 11 degrees in the south and 5 or 6 further north, and with some brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, feeling colder still. A cold start to Tuesday as well, quite a widespread frost across the UK, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this weather front pushing its way eastwards into the afternoon, likely to turn to sleet and snow over hills in the north. Further wet and windy weather is likely through Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll see those temperatures on the rise too, back to around, if not above, average for the time of year.
we can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Happy 1st of December, Christmas is coming. We've bought a tree. It is at 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In the Take at 10, as pressure mounts on Gregg Wallace, the MasterChef star just keeps on digging.
Handful of middle-class women of a certain age.
Yikes! Well, I'll be giving my verdict on yet another scandal engulfing the BBC, plus more shock revelations. Meanwhile, as one of the party's biggest names, Ben Habib, storms out of Reform UK, have Reform descended into civil war? And why does the world's richest man, Elon Musk, want to give Nigel Farage £100 million? I'll be asking former government minister and Reform UK spokesperson, Anne Widdecombe. Plus, at tomorrow's papers at 10:30 with full pundit reaction this evening, former Conservative MP Michael Fabricant. We have the Mail on Sunday editor-at-large Charlotte Griffiths and TV News legend Michael Crick. So, a packed show, lots to get through. The BBC once again on the brink. But first, our very upstanding and right and proper newsreader, Sam Francis.
Mark, thank you very much. Good evening to you. Fast approaching 2 minutes past 10. The top story tonight, more than 20,000 migrants have now crossed the Channel since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister in July, hitting that milestone in 5 months. That is quicker than during Rishi Sunak's time in number 10, where it took 8.5 months to reach the same figure. The Prime Minister's accused the Conservatives of opening the borders, he says, and promised to cut numbers after record high asylum costs emerged of £5 billion. It also comes as 50 people have now died attempting that journey this year, making 2024 the deadliest year on record. Well, Gregg Wallace is facing backlash tonight after dismissing allegations of historical misconduct, claiming it's being driven, he said, by middle-class women of a certain age. One accuser has said it shows he clearly hasn't learnt his lesson, while another claims he's trying to portray himself as the victim of classism. Those claims against him include inappropriate jokes and requests for female staff's phone numbers. The 60-year-old has stepped aside from the BBC MasterChef programme after an investigation revealed 13 complaints of inappropriate behaviour spanning some 17 years. Though Wallace's lawyers insist he has nothing to hide after working with thousands of contestants, the BBC has said it will take all complaints seriously. A 34-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of rape at the Groucho Club in Soho in London. That arrest took place on Saturday night at an address in Hertfordshire, according to the Metropolitan Police. At this stage, the force says there's no suggestion that any employees of the club were involved. The Groucho, a private members venue popular with celebrities in the capital, had its licence suspended earlier this week, following a request made by the Met Police. We understand the woman who reported the incident is now being supported by specialist officers. Police are hunting a man who was caught on camera performing a Nazi salute during a pro-Palestine protest in central London this weekend. The gesture was made near counter-protesters waving Israeli flags as tensions flared on Saturday. Rival groups were heard trading abuse at Coventry Street, separated by metal barriers and a wall of officers. The Met Police Force is now appealing for information and are calling the act a potential public order offence, with counter-protesters adding the incident shows why British Jews feel unsafe in the capital. Let's bring you some news from Turkey this evening. We're hearing that a 20-year-old British man has sadly died after an unexplained fall into a lift shaft while on holiday there. Tyler Kerry from Essex was discovered fatally injured at a hotel in Antalya on Friday morning. His family have said he was full of personality, kindness and compassion, adding in a statement that his death has left them completely devastated. More than £5,000 has already been raised online to help cover the cost of his funeral. In Wales, dozens of homes have been evacuated this afternoon after a sinkhole believed to be up to 60 feet deep appeared at the bottom of a local resident's driveway in Merthyr Tydfil. Residents say they heard rumbling and collapsing overnight, fearing their homes could be swallowed. The sinkhole is believed to have been triggered by a collapsed culvert just days after Storm Bert's heavy rain brought severe flooding. South Wales police and fire and rescue crews have been on site throughout the day, with authorities warning people to stay away as more rain could bring more rain and make the situation worse. And with Christmas fast approaching, could this be the festive hit of the season? Take a listen. Yes, that is Ed Davies' bid for Christmas #1, and it's heating up as his charity single Love Is Enough has now jumped to number 6 on the iTunes charts. The song, recorded with a full orchestra and 20 singers, was inspired by the Lib Dem leader's own experience as a teenage carer. And now it's not only winning hearts but also raising funds for the Carers Trust and Bath Philharmonia. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'll hand you straight back to Mark, who I can hear in the distance singing along.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Busy show tonight as one of the party's biggest names, Ben Habib, storms out of Reform UK. Has Nigel Farage's political revolution run aground? I'll be asking Anne Widdecombe. Plus tomorrow's papers with full pundit reaction. But first, the Take at 10. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. MasterChef presenter Gregg Wallace clearly didn't get the memo.
In the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age just from Celebrity MasterChef.
Yikes. It looks like he is using the same public relations advisor as Prince Andrew. The rap sheet against this greengrocer turned TV superstar grows longer by the day. The Times newspaper has revealed that a BBC executive warned Gregg Wallace in 2017 that his alleged sexist behaviour on set was unacceptable and could not continue. Well, he allegedly carried on demeaning women in a various number of ways for a further 6 years. Now, this intervention 7 years ago came after the brilliant Times radio broadcaster Asma Mir complained about inappropriate comments Wallace had made during the filming of Celebrity MasterChef. She flagged this up with bosses in an email, saying, and I quote, "This must not happen again to another woman." Now, the BBC reportedly raised this issue with Wallace himself, but quite clearly failed to stop it. Wallace received another warning from BBC bosses the following year after a complaint was raised about his behaviour on a different show, the quiz programme Impossible Celebrities. I've got to say, this feels all too familiar. Concerns about Hugh Edwards had been floating around the BBC for years, including alleged creepy texts to colleagues and lewd comments before the shock news that he had procured images of child sex abuse. And what about allegations surrounding Radio 1 DJ Tim Westwood, then Radio 2 star Russell Brand, and most recently, the football pundit Jermaine Jenis, who was ultimately sacked after admitting sending inappropriate messages to female colleagues? What's going on here? We're getting to the point where if cops want to weed out questionable characters in our society, their first port of call should be the BBC canteen. Now, some of the criticism around Gregg Wallace is about innuendo and gags that he has made. Now, some of that may have been in poor taste, and if he's made women feel uncomfortable or worse, that is appalling. But wordplay and lewd humour are not against the law and are not crime of the century. If they were, you'd be firing Mary Berry for her soggy bottom, and Mrs. Slocum, remember her from Are You Being Served, and her beloved pussy? But Wallace faces 3 more serious allegations: that he groped women. Celebrity MasterChef winner Emma Kennedy reported Wallace's behaviour to a member of the production crew after she believed that she may have seen him inappropriately touch a camera assistant during a photo shoot for the 2012 finals. Kennedy said the photographer had a young female assistant and she bent over in front of me. Gregg went over and went caw with his hands over her arse. Wallace has also been accused of mimicking a sexual act on a member of staff and stripping off his clothes and dancing with only a sock on his penis, presumably one of those smaller socks. The presenter Kirsty Walk told the BBC on Thursday that Wallace twice used sexualised language in front of a number of people when she appeared on Celebrity MasterChef in 2011. Times radio star Asma Mir added, "It's a pattern of behaviour, and I don't think people like that should be indulged." She goes on, "My major takeaway is that he felt able to say a sexist comment in front of a camera crew and nobody flinched. No one said anything." Now, it's critically important to stress that Gregg Wallace denies all the allegations. And it's critically important that he gets a fair hearing, as the BBC and the production company involved conduct a full investigation. But it's quite clear that serious allegations have been made over a number of years about one of the BBC's biggest stars. And it appears to be the familiar story of our national state broadcaster, arguably asleep at the wheel, as concerning rumours about a high-profile presenter mount. We've been here before, haven't we? What a shambles. And here's the kicker. You and I are paying for it. In fact, the licence fee goes up next year to £174.50. They're having a laugh. Whether these allegations are proven or not, it is doubtful that Gregg Wallace will return as the host of MasterChef. His goose is cooked, but it's the BBC which is the stuffed turkey. Gobble, gobble. Your reaction, folks. Very Christmas themed tonight, isn't it? You've got to have a look at the trees in the moment. I'm very, very excited. The elves came in at 1 a.m. last night. I was still here, working overtime on the show, making it as good as possible for you. And we've gone very Christmassy. So, but let me know your thoughts about this. Has Gregg Wallace been given trial by media, a difficult ride by press coverage? gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your comments in a moment. But first, tonight's top pundits. Former Conservative MP Michael Fabricant. The editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, the one and only Charlotte Griffiths, and last but not least, TV news legend Michael Crick. Good to see all three of you. Let me start with you, Michael, because you were at the BBC for many years on Newsnight and other programmes. Is there a cultural problem at our national state broadcaster?
I don't know how many times I've done this programme of yours, Mark. Probably about 15. On about a third of occasion, you have a bit of BBC bashing.
Well, I think I'm entitled to. We pay a fortune for it. We can criticise it.
You know as well as I do that I'm not condoning any of these allegations, but you know as well as I do there have been problems at other it's a problem for broadcasters. I
wonder if there are
problems for the media.
Fewer problems.
Well, the BBC is a large corporation, bigger than, say, GB News. There are allegations about GB News. Byline Times made a series of serious allegations about BBC, and they're still up there.
They're entitled
They're still up there. They're still up there online if people want to look at them. The Russell Brand Dispatches programme made by Channel 4, I think a large number of the allegations in that concerned him at Channel 4. And it was to Channel 4's credit that they were to the fore, along, I think, with the Sunday Times in exposing Russell Brand. And in this case, the BBC, as in the Hugh Edwards case, has been to the fore in exposing both these allegations and those against Hugh Edwards. And you need to credit the BBC with that. And I wonder whether if there were similar allegations in this company, whether you would do the same. So stop BBC bashing. I don't know why you do it. If you want to bash the BBC for political reasons or because you don't like the output, that's one thing. But I do start to wonder whether there are commercial reasons behind it. And it's not just your programme that does it. The other programme I do, Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's always going on about the BBC as well. And the BBC is something you should be proud of as a patriot, instead of bashing it all the time.
Methinks you protest us too much, Michael.
Well, I do, because I think it needs defending. Yeah, but because I've got you three up against me.
By the way,
it's 3-1.
I'm delighted at everything you've said, because you're entitled to your view, and it's a view that will be shared by millions. And the reason I say that is because the BBC, online, on radio, and on television, has millions of consumers every week who are very happy with the product. Whether it's I Got News for You, nature programmes, the news, all the rest of it. And I think the BBC is a fantastic brand. It's an asset. It has soft diplomatic power globally. And what a legacy, what a pedigree it's got. However, Hugh Edwards, rumours were circulating about his behaviour for years before the story broke. And why, if Gregg Wallace was speaking inappropriately to female colleagues in 2017, then warned about it a year later again by the same broadcaster, why wasn't he fired?
Yeah, I know that the BBC did not handle the Hugh Edwards case and doesn't appear to have handled this case well. But the other broadcasters, in the case of Russell Brand, and there are problems in ITV as well, they haven't always handled it either. People don't handle these problems very well, and it's not just a broadcasting... I mean, we see it in politics too.
But don't you think there's a systemic problem?
Michael.
I just think, I take a lot of what you say and understand what you say, but I think there's a systemic problem within the corporation. It tries to defend, quite rightly, its employees and people whom are working under contract for the BBC.
And let's Gary Lineker call the October the 7th attacks the Hamas thing.
Yeah, and, if you're going to mention other people, of course, Jimmy Savile, you would have thought the BBC would have set up better structures. They've got a very good HR department for the defence of people who work for the BBC, quite rightly, quite properly. But, you know, they also have to defend other contributors.
Charlotte, you have a capacious knowledge of the world of entertainment, so what is your thought on this?
I think there is a systemic problem, but I think it's more the culture of production companies. I slightly agree with you, actually, because they use production companies with very transient levels of staff paid very badly. So when Gregg Wallace says it's only middle-class people, that's because they're the ones with power and can afford to speak up. So in Emma Kennedy's case, she spoke up for a much younger production assistant who was in her 20s. She didn't have the power to stick up for herself. She was a freelance working for a production company who might have lost her job if she said anything. So I actually think this is to do with the way that the freelance production company structure works. And they need, you know, with Banjay Media, which looked after MasterChef...
But that didn't apply when it came to Hugh... Hugh Edwards. It didn't apply certainly to Jimmy Savile, but, I mean, because in those days it wasn't contracted out. But I think there is still a major problem in the corporation which hasn't been properly addressed by the board.
There's been a major problem in Parliament. We've discussed that on numerous occasions. I suspect there's been, in the 40 years of the Mail on Sunday or the 120 years at the Daily Mail, there have been problems as well. You may not know about them. They may have been before your time.
Sorry, behave badly.
No,
oh
no,
of course not. What I'm going to do is we're going to restart this at 10:30 with the papers because the Gregg Wallace story is all over the front pages. So we'll come straight back to it, and Michael can say anything he likes about the BBC or GB News because that's what this programme is all about. And is Michael right? Am I BBC bashing? Is this opportunism just to criticise our national state broadcaster? Does it feel like an agenda to you? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Let's have a couple of responses, certainly from the BBC, who have said, if issues are raised with us, we have robust processes in place to deal with them swiftly and appropriately. Mr. Wallace's lawyers insist the claims are entirely false, saying the suggestion that Wallace, who has presented the popular BBC One cooking show alongside John Turode since 2005, engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature, was entirely false. OK, well, look, coming straight back to that at 10:30. I think you'll agree sparks are going to fly. But first, our biggest and greatest Great British giveaway this year. Your chance to win £50,000 in tax-free cash. It's the biggest cash prize we've ever given away, and it could be yours. So here is how you get your hands on 50k.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, folks, coming up, as one of the party's biggest names, Ben Habib, storms out of Reform UK, is Nigel Farage's political revolution hitting the buffers? And why does the world's richest man, Elon Musk, want to give Mr Farage £100 million? I'll be asking former government minister and Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe next.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunj Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunj and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror, and I've heard this story so many times before,
Yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan, and they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just, like, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
How about this from Lisa? I'm wondering if I'm being too hard on the BBC. Lisa says, by getting annoyed about a focus on the BBC, your panel member, Michael Crick, conveniently avoids answering the question about Wallace's behaviour and comments. Can we talk about that? Michael Crick says Les is obviously blind to any bad behaviour by the BBC and he hates to hear any criticism and he's eager to attack GB News. So why appear on Mark's programme? Well, Les, you're entitled to your view, as is Michael. That's what this show is all about. Keep those opinions coming. I'll do much more feedback at 10:30. Sorry, it's been a busy show tonight, but we've got to get to this. Is there trouble in paradise? The former deputy leader of Reform UK, Ben Habib, has left the party over differences in regard to the democratic structure of the organisation and its position on Brexit and immigration. Here is an unhappy Ben Habib speaking earlier this week.
HQ at Reform has forbidden the new branches they've set up from having me speak to them. It seems these criticisms that I have, ideological as well as constitutional criticisms I have of the party, are an affront to them. But I think that their prohibition on my speaking, their prohibition on my free speech, their reluctance to democratise, their ideological differences with me now leaves me no option but to say I'm not affiliated with Reform, I'm afraid.
Well, let's get reaction now from former government minister and Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. And this is unseemly, isn't it? Party members fighting like rats in a sack.
Hang on, party members. You have one man walking out who has been unhappy, but you have one man walking out.
A senior figure, Anne.
Now, just a minute, and you talk about party members fighting. Sorry, who's fighting whom?
Well, he's at war with his own party because it won't democratise and he's got no free speech.
One man, you've just said party members. What we have here is one man walking out. Now, the other major parties, quite frankly, would give their right arms to only have one person ever walk out on them. Look at the Civil War. No, look at the Civil War that's torn the Tories apart over the last few years. Look at Labour and its civil wars. One man walks out of Reform and you say members are fighting. No, they're not.
Well, it's one man.
Our membership has cost 100,000 We're going up in the polls. We're polling in Wales. It's level with Labour, and in fact, in one poll ahead of Labour. All that is being achieved, and you're picking on one thing that has gone wrong. Now, let me say this. I have huge respect for Ben Habib.
Doesn't sound like it.
I know.
You've just thrown him under the bus, under the Reform UK bus, driven by Nigel Farage. Toot, toot.
He's walked out, you silly man. We haven't thrown him under a bus. He's left the bus. For goodness sake, get the bus.
Now, you've just called him a silly man, or you called me a silly man, and the bottom line, this is a guy of colossal stature, a self-made entrepreneur, and a guy that helped Nigel to achieve this political revolution. Now he's some kind of insignificant figure that apparently you can do without, ignoring his rather important messages about what's going wrong in Reform UK.
Now, first of all, I suggest you stop putting words in my mouth. I've certainly never in my life called Ben Habib insignificant. I was trying to say before you interrupted.
Well, you said it's only one person. Only one.
There you go again. But I have a great admiration for Ben Habib. He knows I do, so nothing you can say is going to undermine that. I also happen to like Ben Habib, and I respect what he's done for reform.
With friends like that?
He is wanting a pace of democratisation that at the moment can't be realised. We're democratising very fast. We're setting up branches all over the country. Come on, Ben. You know, but we cannot do everything at once. And that is the problem. Yes, he is one man. Doesn't mean I don't think he's significant, but he is still one man. And you said members fighting. That was the point I was making.
Does his departure not provoke a nanosecond of self-reflection on the part of the party?
This party is going great guns.
So the answer is no. No self-reflection.
The answer is this party is going great guns. We've got fantastic membership, setting up branches. We're doing well.
You've lost a member.
We want always reflect, because if we don't, we shall fall into the trap that the other parties have fallen into. So, of course, we'll reflect. And, you know, I would love to see Ben come back. But at the moment, we are where we are. And it is not members fighting. And there's no war and there's no great quarrel. Ben Habib has left us.
Now, Ben Habib effectively accused Nigel Farage of a sellout on Brexit. He said Brexit hasn't been properly done. You agree with that, don't you, Anne?
Totally. But the fact is that Nigel Farage isn't in charge of delivering Brexit. You know, first of all, Boris Johnson was in charge of it and proclaimed Brexit has been done, when Ben Habib and I and Nigel and everybody else will tell you it has not been. And now, sadly, it's in the hands of the Labour Party, who will make an even worse job of it. But elect a reform government next time, and we will make sure that Brexit is a genuine Brexit that makes Britain great. We will make sure of that.
OK, well, listen, Anne, of course, this is something of a political drama. I suspect that Reform UK will survive it. And who knows, maybe Ben Habib will make a glorious return. He'll be happy if he's watching this to know that he's still a friend. Speaking of friends, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, is rumoured to be considering handing $100 million to Reform UK in order to spark a political revolution similar to that of Donald Trump in the US. Would you welcome such an intervention?
Oh, look, if I had the sort of money that Elon Musk has got, I would certainly be giving $100 million to Reform. Though, having said that, you know, these are rumours. These are rumours, Mark, as you yourself admit. There's no announced plan for such a donation. But Reform is a new party. We've always had less money than the other parties. And therefore, you know, all help is welcome.
Anne, always a treat. Ben Habib has asked you to send him a text after the show, so hopefully you've got his number. My thanks to former Government Minister, the formidable, the brilliant Anne Whittingham, of course, one of the most compelling political voices in the country. She's now a Reform UK spokesperson. Your reaction to what Anne had to say, are you worried about this civil war at Reform UK? Are the wheels coming off of Nigel Farage's political revolution? gbnews.com/your say. We've got the papers next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. There's been plenty of showers around for many of us this weekend, but it will be turning colder as we head into the start of the new working week. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure moving away towards Scandinavia, leaving northerly winds across the UK as we head into the start of Monday and Tuesday. Back to the rest of Sunday though, plenty of showers around, these clearing their way eastwards as we head through the evening and turning increasingly to sleet and snow across northern parts of Scotland, particularly over any high ground. Further south and further east, we will see some clearer spells developing during the early hours, and for most of us, it'll be a much colder night than we've seen recently. Only 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Scotland and only around 6 or 7 degrees across much of England and Wales. So quite a chilly start across parts of Scotland during Monday morning, perhaps some ice around in places, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. But we'll see those sleet and snow showers continuing across the far north as we go through Monday daytime. Across Northern Ireland, there will still be some showers around, these likely falling as rain for most places. And across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day. But for the rest of England and Wales, generally a drier and brighter start to the day, albeit some scattered showers across western areas. That area of showery rain across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards in towards Monday afternoon, and we'll still see those sleet and snow showers across parts of Scotland into the afternoon as well. But for most of us, it should be turning a little bit drier through the afternoon, with plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer and feeling much colder than we've seen recently. Only 10 or 11 degrees in the south and 5 or 6 further north, and with some brisk northerly winds across eastern coast, feeling colder still. A cold start to Tuesday as well, quite a widespread frost across the UK, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this weather front pushing its way eastwards into the afternoon, likely to turn to sleet and snow over hills in the north. Further wet and windy weather is likely through Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll see those temperatures on the rise too, back to around, if not above average for the time of year.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, folks, we've got tomorrow's papers hot off the press, courtesy of Bobby. Let's take a look. And let's have a look. Metro now. Backlash at TV Gregg's shock claim. Women of a certain rage is the headline. The Daily Star. When you're in a really, really deep hole, stop digging. That's in relation to Gregg Wallace as well. The Guardian. Plan to finally transform end-of-life care for 100,000. MPs, doctors and charities have drawn up a blueprint to deliver an unprecedented transformation of care for 100,000 people a year in the final stages of life. Outrage over Wallace's middle-class women jibe. Assad allies rally after surprise fall of Aleppo. Daily Express. He has insulted every single one of us. What a ghastly little man. Virginia Blackburn on Gregg Wallace's comments about women. Labour budget will cost the economy £10 billion. Labour's budget raid on family firms will risk more than 125,000 jobs and cost the economy £10 billion, a report claims. Tomorrow's damning declaration by the Confederation of British Industry says the government's inheritance tax changes will clobber family-owned businesses and hurt farms. British public backs closer EU trade over Trump deal. The Times, Russian airstrikes hit Syria as Assad vows to crush rebellion. Women in their 50s exercise more than others half their age. That means they can run after Gregg Wallace and give him a thump, doesn't it? Labour NHS target will make A&E waits worse. NHS bosses have warned that vital services will be cut back and A&E departments risk being turned into war zones to hit a target for routine operations that Sir Keir Starmer will put at the centre of his plan for government this week. God, this business of running the country, not as easy as it looks, is it? How about The Sun now? MasterChef hosts outburst. Shut your cake hole, Gregg. Those are the front pages. Let's get reaction now from three good friends of mine. I'm delighted to welcome former Tory MP, Michael Fabricant, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. Is that your correct title? Mm-hmm. Glad to hear it. And TV news legend, that is his title, Michael Crick. I know that because he made me
Only
say
for you.
Always, always. OK, folks, well, look, there is only one story in town. It is Gregg Wallace. And do you think, Michael Crick, that actually other quarters of the media are using this story as a chance to attack the BBC, including the Murdoch-owned Sun newspaper with the headline, "Shut your cake hole, Gregg"?
Of course. I mean, they do this all the time and have got commercial reasons to do so. It's no secret that Rupert Murdoch's no fan of the BBC. I don't suppose the headlines are directed, you know, I don't suppose... Well, occasionally, well, there was a time when he used to write headlines in The Sun himself. It's now more his son Lachlan who is the power within the business. But, and not just the Murdoch papers, I mean, the Mail papers as well occasionally take...
Is that fair, Charlotte?
Well, this news, the front of the Sun doesn't actually talk about the BBC at all. It just says, "Shut your cake hole, Gregg." And
but of course, they're all over this because it's a BBC star, just as they were all over Hugh Edwards.
Yeah, but also
you know,
Phil
do
Schofield.
papers like the Sun and the Mail, do they have an agenda against the BBC?
Look, I think they want to advocate for people who paid their money for a service, you know? And the thing is about the BBC is we pay, as you said earlier, £174, is it going to be next year?
And 50p.
And
50p is for Gary Lineker's gold cufflinks, by the way.
Well, newspapers are in the business, especially my newspaper, of holding people like this to account if they're going to take our money and provide a service that we don't really have any rights over, except to expect, you know, a proper quality of behaviour.
But, you know, when I used to work for Channel 4 and for ITN, who also produce at the ITV News, often the BBC would do something and the press would be all over them and it would be an outrage. And then you discover that ITN had done something, you know, even worse or an even bigger example of this, or Channel 4 News had, and we would get hardly any criticism whatsoever.
The Mail went after Phil Schofield.
Oh, yeah.
And that was very thoroughly executed. And it was ITV.
But, Michael, are you saying that we mustn't ever criticise the holier-than-thou?
No, of course not.
On the Sermon of the Mount, the Ivory Tower?
I frequently criticise the BBC on Twitter, but I think you've got to do it you've got to ask yourself, what is the motivation here? Is it because I think the BBC has behaved badly and wrongly here and therefore they deserve criticism, or is it because they're competitors?
Well, are you saying then that they haven't behaved badly and wrongly?
Sorry?
Are you saying they haven't behaved badly?
No, I'm not saying they haven't behaved badly and wrongly.
Are you saying that they have learned lessons from Jimmy Savile
both
onwards?
Mark and Jacob Rees-Mogg, whose programmes I do regularly, you know, often come out with an anti-BBC item, and it gets rather repetitive. You know, do you come out with lots of... I mean, maybe I wasn't there those nights that you came out with an anti-ITN item,
well, I was
anti-Channel 4 item, or anti-Sky item.
I was pretty hard on ITV during the Philip Schofield.
But of course, they're competitors too.
True. I mean, I'm open to your criticism of my criticisms, but I mean, certainly when it comes to the BBC's shows like Have I Got News for You, where it appears to be a crime to be on the right politically, Question Time feels like an echo chamber.
Well, that is a criticism with which I would agree, and indeed I gave a lecture about exactly that issue in Oxford a few years ago. So, and I've been, you know, worried about bias to the left within both the BBC and Channel 4 for some years now. I mean, I think in your case, it's even worse to the right, and I've said that too.
I'm just
I think the last time I said it, I wasn't on air here for another 4 months.
No, well, you'd never get cancelled by me. Not on my watch, Chris.
Can I just say, on the subject of bias to the left, you read out the I headline, which said British public backs closer EU trade over Trump deal.
Yeah.
And then you read a little bit further down, 47% of the UK public would prefer trade with the EU. 53% would actually prefer it with the US.
So it's a
Yes, absolutely.
Hang on.
And this is typical... No, it's not Mark's fault. It is typical our newspaper.
Or the leftist media.
Absolutely right. Precisely the point you were making.
Where does it say 50%?
Because we're supposed to have a balanced, broad spectrum, and aren't we clever because we read...
Charlotte.
I think that's not quite right, Michael. I think what the I is saying here is that almost half of voters want closer ties with Europe, But Conservative voters want to prioritise America over Brussels. I can't see the 53%.
No,
there.
it's called arithmetic, Michael. No, basically, they've taken out the don't knows. They've taken out the don't knows. So there are 47% who want it, and of those who've actually decided to have an opinion, 53%, because you know what? 47 and 53 makes 100%, and it's taken out the don't knows.
How do you know they've taken them out?
I know they've taken out the don't knows. And I'm just saying, look at this ruddy headline. British public.
Well, I mean, if they have done, you're right. But I suspect there's no evidence they've taken out the don't knows.
Charlotte, notwithstanding that, these two can squabble all night. I think they seek. I agree. I'm the same. So the viewers secretly they love each other, but let's not go there now. Charlotte,
Greg.
Notwithstanding the figures, this is a yellow brick road moment for Sir Keir Starmer. Do we fall into the bosom of the United States, the biggest trading bloc outside of the EU, or do we head back to Brussels? You can't have both, can you?
Can't have both, and I think probably he'll head back to Brussels, and I kind of hope he does, because I don't want to be eating chlorinated chicken.
Well, then don't buy chlorinated chicken. And I'll tell you what, in Lichfield, in my constituency where I still live, in Lichfield, there's Florette, who are the people who make, pre-prepared salads. And to make it fresh, to make it clean, it's chlorinated. And you know what? It hasn't killed anybody. Okay, and if you don't like chlorinated chicken, don't buy chlorinated chicken.
We all know not to buy bags of salad for that very reason.
Not Florette.
About chlorinated chicken is because the farmers will have been screwed, and so the price will be reduced.
Right.
It'll be very hard not to choose chlorinated chicken.
And it's also lower food standards, isn't it? That's the problem.
Exactly, and that's something we've always really stuck up for ourselves on.
I mean, it's a dilemma for Starmer, isn't it? Really, I'm actually a bit like my chat earlier with Theo Usherwood, because I was saying to Theo that if Starmer gets legal net migration down to, let's say, circa 200k, I think that's a political win for him. I'm not sure his party will want that. Similarly, I think a trade deal with America would be another win for Sir Keir Starmer, but would Labour backbenchers countenance that?
Well, on the immigration thing, you say it's not a win for... I think overall the party would want to get immigration down. They are getting a huge amount of pressure from the voters, particularly in the traditional Labour seats. Sorry?
Even if it hurt the public sector?
I think overall Labour would desperately want to get immigration down. That's one of the things on which they're going to be judged. On the wider issue, Starmer is, a Remainer. He said we're not going to go back into the customs union. We're not going to go back into the single market. There's no question of any of that. I think if the economy goes as it looks like it's going, they're going to have to get to speed that up and move towards Europe in this Parliament. And indeed, if Starmer went down as the Prime Minister that took us back into Europe, I think he'd be quite pleased with that. But there's a long way to go before that.
There you go. Well, listen, now it's a question, isn't it? Because if Starmer, let's say, wins the next election, if it's a decade in power, would Britain wind up back in the European Union? Would that be a good or a bad thing? I'll be asking Michael Fabricant, and I'll be asking Fabricant whether he thinks a trade deal with America is the way to go. Plus, developing story, and this is about Gregg Wallace. I'll give you some fresh lines on this. Just landed. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Go on, Eamon.
Go on, Eamon. What does Eamon mean? I mean, I must admit, I never liked my name, ever. And then I realised that it's made me more individual because there are no other Eamons about. So therefore I can go by, whereas no one would know Isabel. She's Isabel Webster. She'd have two
a penny.
names. But Isabel means something like light. But I was named after the TV presenter. My mother was in hospital, couldn't think of a name, and the TV presenter, Eamon Andrews, popped up on the television, and she said, "Oh, he's got hair like my Eamon," and she called me Eamon after him. Oh, lovely! Oh, that may have determined what I ended up doing.
My mum said if I was a boy,
I would have been called Marius.
Marius.
Which I think is quite a weird choice.
It is a little
Marius
weird
Webster. I'm forever grateful.
Whatever you call a child, however weird or strange, whatever, the child becomes that name. So
Over half of us judge people instantly on their name. So we make assumptions on people based on their name. I'm not sure I do, but I mean, you mentioning you changing your name from an African name to a more anglicised name.
No doubt about that. So there's no doubt about that. Like, you know, if I'm on the blower, I sound like a London boy.
Yeah.
But I turn up as Keezy. Boy, mate, you don't belong around here.
Yeah.
That was what it was like 50 years ago. You know, now, I mean, and like even today. So sometimes today, like, I get some speaking engagements, and I will wear my traditional wear because, you know, I've accepted Keezy and my African heritage. And then the abuse you get on social media, you're not British, call yourself English, mate. No. You know, and you get all sorts of lyrics. So when a name says your ancestry is from another part of the country, part of the world, it can be detrimental.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
OK, listen, folks, lots of stories bubbling around, and there are things that Michael wants to talk about, as do all of us, so we'll get to those shortly. More front pages, the Daily Telegraph. Wallace, middle-class women of a certain age caused the row. Assad vows to crush rebel uprising in Aleppo. And Starmer to sideline flagship pledge to boost the economy. Keir Starmer will sideline his flagship pledge to make the UK the fastest-growing economy in the G7 this week when he unveils new targets to make British people richer. The plot thickens. Daily Mirror now. TV presenter Sleaze Storm. Disaster chef is the headline. And how about this? The Daily Mail with fresh allegations. As MasterChef star faces furious backlash for blaming furore on middle-class women of a certain age, his accusers reveal how the BBC was warned 4 times about Gregg Wallace. Now, Charlotte Griffiths, can I ask you whether you are offended by his remarks, his attempts to defend himself by saying that it's just a handful of middle-class women that have attacked him?
Well, as a middle-class, possibly not middle-aged woman, I'm really offended. I think middle-class, middle-aged women, certainly middle-aged women in the workplace, have often battled through a lot of misogyny themselves, birthed a whole load of children in some cases, managed to keep their careers on tracks, and then to be kind of accused of being sort of haranguing, finger-pointing old kind of fishwives is just so offensive. And actually, I think that the fact that they are middle-aged, middle-class women or whatever, such as Asma Mir and Emma Kennedy, is actually women advocating for women below them, you know, who are, you know, paid a pittance to be low-level producers. And so they've used their power and their success to look after women beneath them in the pecking order who will one day become the middle-aged women. So good for middle-aged women, I think.
I mean, that video of him defending himself, that's enough on its own to get him cancelled, isn't it?
I know. He's obviously a narcissist and, you know, has just no self-awareness.
Very unusual for TV presenters, let me tell you.
just no self-awareness. And the #1 rule of coping with woke cancellation is never blame the victim. And, you know, we all know this by now. And, you know, if he had a good team around him, they probably wouldn't be able to save him, but they would be able to stop him from completely disgracing
But doesn't it remind you of Trump's vice president who referred to single cat ladies?
Well, that was so offensive
yeah, absolutely.
J.D. Vance.
Absolutely. J.D. Vance, yeah.
Well, this shows that misogyny is still rife throughout all corners of the media.
I'm afraid so.
No, the only place you won't find it is this sofa. Now, Michael, let me ask you about Donald Trump. Do you think that Keir Starmer should pursue a trade deal with America?
Yes, I do think so. They are our biggest single partner in trade. It's very, before I became an MP, I used to set up radio and television stations. And one of the easiest countries to deal with was the United States. Why? It's not just the fact that they have a common language, but it's a common legal system. They use the English legal system, apart from New Orleans, by the way, which has the Napoleonic system. Trying to do business, particularly in France, where I was involved, had to be involved with bribery. In Italy,
right?
And yes.
You had to bribe people to do business?
With the ORTF, which was their equivalent of the BBC. It was that which made me a Brexiteer, by the way.
Right?
I can see how different they were.
Do you think it's still like that on the continent? The black economy?
I would hope not. I would hope not. I don't know, because I haven't been doing that business for some time. But what I do know is I travel a lot to Europe. I was in Rome only last weekend. I travel a lot to the United States of America, and I do know that we share a lot in common with them.
Can I get a very quick line from you on the Labour MP effectively calling for a blasphemy law earlier this week? You sat in the Commons for a long, long time. You left in July. What would your reaction have been if you'd been in the chamber?
I would have been shocked. Look, I'm a great believer. Look, my name is Fabricant. It's a French origin. My long past, antecedents would have emigrated to this country. I have no problem with that. I'm of Jewish extraction, though I'm not practicing Jewish. But I believe that when you come to this country, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And one of the things we have in this country is tolerance. And all right, if that means occasionally you want to insult a religion. I remember the case some years ago of a girl teaching in the Sudan who had a teddy bear, and they called the teddy bear Muhammad. And they said that this was blasphemy, and she was thrown into prison for several weeks, and it took a long time for the British to get her out. The point of the story is this is a tolerant country, and to be asking now for blasphemy laws, which is what he was doing in effect, is taking us back 500-600 years.
Couldn't agree more, and I'm shocked that Keir Starmer didn't squash the idea, and instead he sort of started talking about Islamophobia. Michael, a quick line on Assad vows to crush rebel uprising in Aleppo. Worrying developments.
Yeah, and of course, amidst all this stuff about Gregg Wallace, which seems to be dominating most of the tabloids, there are, more important stories. I mean,
there are.
Or even more important stories, and Aleppo is one of them.
Yeah.
And is it good news or bad news? On the hand, Assad is a horrible man, but then some of the rebels probably aren't very nice either. So, but it is an interesting development and a sign of the fact that the Middle East is catching fire everywhere.
And the weakness of Russia. And the weakness of Russia.
Okay, Charlotte,
good point.
Charlotte, last word. Starmer to sideline flagship pledge to boost the economy. I mean, this is just a slow car crash, isn't it?
I know. Isn't this because, obviously... Rishi Sunak was doing better with the G7, so it's another admission from him that they're not doing too well and they need to move their target.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I think we're doomed, folks, Captain Mannering. I'm delighted to say Headliners puts a smile on our face with Cressida in a couple of minutes' time. Hey, Cressida.
Hello, Mark. Good evening. Excuse me. Hello. Yes, Headliners. It's coming up. We're looking at tomorrow's papers tonight. We're going to be talking about MPs who only want to work 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Very suspicious. We're going to be talking about Gregg Wallace, of course, and I'll be joined by Paul Cox and Ben Adams. So tune in at 11.
Thoroughly enjoying Headliners at the moment. Cressida's up next. Thank you, Cressida. Have a good one. Thank you to Michael and Charlotte. Most importantly, to Mel and the team for working so hard this weekend, and to you at home. I'll see you Friday at 8.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. There's been plenty of showers around for many of us this weekend, but it will be turning colder as we head into the start of the new working week. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure moving away towards Scandinavia, leaving northerly winds across the UK as we head into the start of Monday and Tuesday. Back to the rest of Sunday, though, plenty of showers around, these clearing their way eastwards as we head through the evening and turning increasingly to sleet and snow across northern parts of Scotland, particularly over any high ground. Further south and further east, we will see some clearer spells developing during the early hours, and for most of us, it'll be a much colder night than we've seen recently. Only 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Scotland and only around 6 or 7 degrees across much of England and Wales. So quite a chilly start across parts of Scotland during Monday morning, perhaps some ice around in places, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. But we'll see those sleet and snow showers continuing across the far north as we go through Monday daytime. Across Northern Ireland, there will still be some showers around, these likely falling as rain for most places. And across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day. But for the rest of England and Wales, generally a drier and brighter start to the day, albeit some scattered showers across western areas. That area of showery rain across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards in towards Monday afternoon, and we'll still see those sleet and snow showers across parts of Scotland into the afternoon as well. But for most of us, it should be turning a little bit drier through the afternoon, with plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer, and feeling much colder than we've seen recently. Only 10 or 11 degrees in the south and 5 or 6 further north, and with some brisk northerly winds across eastern coast, feeling colder still. A cold start to Tuesday as well, quite a widespread frost across the UK, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this weather front pushing its way eastwards into the afternoon, likely to turn to sleet and snow over hills in the north. Further wet and windy weather is likely through Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll see those temperatures on the rise too, back to around, if not above average for the time of year.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash. We've made loads of winners this year, and you could be our next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan, and I won £30,000 with the Great British Giveaway. It happens to people like me.
For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Phil Kearsey is bringing a new flavour to the Michelin-starred restaurant Pied à Terre as he becomes its new executive head chef. Customers can expect a menu that showcases modern British cooking, accompanied by classical French roots, which uses hyper-seasonal ingredients. What are hyper-seasonal ingredients? That's an interesting phrase.
It's more about just reacting to the seasonality of everything. We like to change the menu all the time. So basically, I surround myself with the best suppliers, and they tell me what's amazing at the moment, and then we try and celebrate that in the restaurant in many different forms, using taste, texture and technique, and just try and celebrate something as humble as a broccoli stem or a cauliflower, using absolutely everything, and making sure we've got an ever-changing menu, so letting the seasons dictate, so it's never boring and we never get menu fatigue.
OK, your career has taken you around the world a bit.
Yeah.
And for example, you were in the United States. What did you learn there?
So, well, every chef I've worked for, it's about to take something from.